Atheist Alliance International Podcast.
I don't make this stuff up.
You know, if you put Jesus Christ first, that he'll look after all your bills.
It's not fake, it's faith.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Atheist Alliance International Podcast. My name is Jason Sylvester, aka Diogenes of Mayberry, and joining us today is another of our ASN volunteers, whose name is Troy. So just before we get started, we'd like to remind everyone to please like and subscribe. Okay, Troy, thank you for joining us today. Maybe you can just give us a quick intro as to who you are and where, if you can tell people where you are if you want.
Sure. My name's Troy. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm in Melbourne at the moment, which is freezing, but being a redhead, it's the weather. Still
freezing because it's only like 19 degrees, or?
Oh, we're down to single figures down here. We don't get snow, but we do get cold, and that's about it. So okay. I've never actually had any experience with snow, despite my bearded outfit and everything like that. So yeah, Melbourne's an interesting place for weather-wise. Historically, how did I get into the game of helping atheists overseas? Like a lot of good stories, mine started with arguing with people on the internet. So I came into Facebook at around about 2010 after having taken in a lot of Hitchens and Dawkins, and before that, Enlightenment in school. And I got into debate groups pretty much immediately online, and one thing I noticed was a lot of people that would watch but not contribute were Muslims who were questioning. They already had doubts about their faith, but they were too afraid to get involved. And I guess because I had a personal brand of not going for the throat and more sort of encouraging, collegial debate, a lot of people would contact me afterwards and have more questions in a personal sort of setting. Via private message. And so I started to rack up a few deconversions, I like to say. And that gave me access to a lot of private groups in Middle Eastern countries. Specifically, Morocco was a big one for me. I ended up in private groups that were safe spaces for atheists, and they had a lot of contacts over there. And they would send cases to me to further help who had questions about religion and things like that. And it turned pretty quickly into helping them formulate ways to get out of the country. And so that's how I eventually ended up here with AAI through a long journey.
Okay. So what, in these group chats that you were having, were you invited in by these people? Like, did they asked you to come and join?
Yeah, so it was a bit of the building of reputation over time. You'd help a few people, and then they would send a relative or something that they'd been working on and couldn't quite get to leave the faith. And then that person would start an individual dialogue with me. And I guess I just built a brand, and it just got me access to more and more places. Eventually, I ended up on the radio in Morocco through my contacts on a fairly decent sized show over there. And I guess that led me to my biggest case in around about 2017 was when I was connected with an Egyptian by the name of Muhammad Hisham. You may have heard about him. He went on TV to speak publicly about being good without God. And it was a huge show over there and a huge risk. And what made the show famous was the two hosts were devout Muslims, and they attacked him immediately on the show. And the show devolved into them haranguing him, but him stoically answering back in a calm manner and managing to get some great one-liners in there as well. The show was watched by tens and tens of millions of people, not just in Egypt, but around the Islamic world and beyond. And it got to such a head that he was attacked in the limousine on the way home from the studio. His family kept him hostage at home as well. And I think I was pretty much the only Westerner put in contact with him purely because of the stuff I'd done in the past. And we had to set up a plan, which was his safety at home. He had to convince his family and the imams at his local mosque that he had found his faith again in a way just so he could survive. there were people in the streets looking for him. The military was looking for him. His home got raided at one point by a 10-man squad whilst he was on the phone to me. And they searched his house, and they had, all sorts of weapons and everything, but none of them spoke English. And they even went through his phone, and we hadn't quite gotten to the point where he deleted that conversation we'd had. Luckily, no one there spoke English, so we dodged that bullet, so to speak, metaphorical and physical. And they left the house and didn't twig on that that was the person they were looking for. That was one of the close calls we've had. The imams from the mosque would come around every day and quiz him on his knowledge of Islam to see if he was in fact, a born-again Muslim. And so we just practiced, researched and made him do all the things that would convince people that he was in fact a Muslim again, until we could put our plan in place, which was multi-pronged. We had to work out a way out. So the first point there was to get money. We needed money fast. We couldn't get money from the traditional groups fast enough, but we did manage to fundraise in an emergency around about $12,000 with the help of some people like Sam Harris, actually, which was really interesting. He found out about the fundraiser and he retweeted it, and that got us the money in just a couple of days. I think it was 2 days or so. So from there, it's a bit of a Hollywood-style escape. We put together an itinerary around the world trip involving stays in, I think it was around about 5 different countries around the world, with an eventual final destination was to be back home in Egypt, but the final stage there was Frankfurt in Germany. And it was that point he was able to claim asylum. Lots of details went into that trip. It had to convince authorities that the whole trip was genuine and was indeed for sightseeing. So he had to have full itineraries and hotel bookings and everything for each country he went to. So it was good fun planning out, trips to all the sites that we were never going to see. But eventually he made it onto that first plane, and the rest is history. He eventually made it into Frankfurt and claimed asylum. And from there, after still more dramas, he almost got deported for one of the interviews he gave. Unbeknownst to him, it was to a publication that was right-leaning, and Germany perceived that to be a character question of his, and may have caused undue distress at home. And they tried to deport him back to Egypt, but he managed to hold on, and is now happily ensconced in life in Germany. He already speaks German. It's only been, I think, 2 years since the whole journey started, and he's almost fluent and back in studying and still an advocate for atheist rights over in Germany.
So they were going to deport him back to a country where everybody was looking for him, and they didn't think that would be a problem.
Yeah. And I guess that highlights just how much we still have to go. His entry interview in Germany was mistranslated by the people in the room, he believes. So he would talk about the reasons he was leaving, and the reasons that came out on paper were very, very, very different. And whilst there's no 100% proof, it's interesting to speculate whether people interfere at that stage of the process when someone is an atheist.
Yeah, we had a case, a gentleman that I actually met. I was at a Humanist International conference in Taiwan, and this gentleman came from Pakistan. And he then went to New Zealand, did the same thing, filed for asylum, and yet the person responsible for his case was a Muslim. And then AAI had to get involved and I think hired another lawyer and basically proved that this woman had bias, and now he does have his asylum in New Zealand. But I guess if you're relying on other fellow Muslims to be your translators, there's a good deal of risk there that they could misinterpret things. But there's a huge UN presence in Bangkok, and I got to know some of the UN investigators who told me they do have some pretty thorough investigations. So if there's ever any wrongdoing, like if someone has applied to the UN for refugee status, to the UNHCR, they will pretty thoroughly investigate that kind of stuff. So it's good to know there are some safeguards in there, at least on the UN side. But for the national governments that are doing it, there's nothing they can do. So, but yeah. So when you were on the radio in Morocco, how did that one go over? Did that ignite a furor in that country, or they're a little more chill and laid back there?
Yeah. So it was through a personal connection. She was relatively famous in Morocco at the time. She had a friend who was a director at the radio station for, I think it was called 3M, and it was like the biggest drive time radio station in Morocco with a big audience over there. At the last minute, they tried to make me change my talking points because I don't think they realized what I was going to talk about. But I kind of stuck to my guns. Yeah. Didn't hear back from the studio. They just said very, very quickly, okay, thanks for your time. I did get some people who found my name from the radio show and contacted me, and that led to just some more success stories with helping people leave religion and things like that. But it was a pretty exciting couple of minutes on the radio. I always wonder what it was like on the streets in prime time drive hour, hearing a Western voice.
Your context there didn't give you any feedback on the uproar that you sparked? Or?
Yeah, basically it was a flash in the pan, I guess.
Yeah.
15 seconds of fame, and they'd already forgotten about it by the time the day was over. I never got a copy of the recording either. The studio wouldn't give it to me, which is a real shame. I would have liked to have kept that one. Yeah,
I wonder because they speak French in Morocco, do they not?
Yeah. Their English uptake is quite good actually. Apparently, I haven't had anyone come across yet who hasn't been able to understand me, despite my thick Australian accent.
Yeah, so it's not that thick. So just jumping back to Mohammed for a second. So did it not occur to him the uproar that he was going to spark by going on this show, or he was prepared to take that risk and knew what he was walking into?
Yep, that's part of his a special charm. There was something like 11 people originally who were asked to join the show. Everybody else realized what an insane idea it was and pulled out, and he was the last person remaining, and he was just committed. He's whilst he started life as a Muslim and he was quite devout as a young boy, he quite quickly got free reign to read whatever he wanted, and he was exposed to all the same ideas as I was, but he's just a much smarter individual. It's not hard to be. So he just thought, if he's going to make an impact on Egyptian society, it has to be at an opportunity like this. And it was the biggest daytime show. Yeah. I think the co-host was from Al-Azhar Mosque University, which is like a huge place of learning over there. So yeah, the reach was huge, and he saw his chance and he took it. If anyone gets a chance to look up his name on YouTube, it's only about a 4-minute video, but it's some of the best 4 minutes you'll ever watch on atheism in your life. He gets some of the best lines out there, and he wins crowds all across the world from that point onwards. And he's wearing a very interesting jumper as well, which you still get. Well,
why don't you send me the link, and I'll put it in the description so that people can find it when this airs.
It's a deal.
Great. So, and you've gotten connected to some other, so besides working for ASN, you're connected to some other atheist groups around the world. Are you a member of any groups in Australia?
Not officially, no. I find it's a bit easier that way, just to get things done, to consult as opposed to be members. It gives me a bit more freedom of movement. I'm not beholden to anyone or to any of the things that go on between groups that way. I guess that freedom of movement gets me, a bit more success in this niche that I have, which tends more towards the unorthodox ways to leave a country. Okay.
And so how did you get involved with the Atheist Support Network at AAI? Who brought you into that one?
Well, one of the people I've been involved with for a long time is Melissa Chen from Ideas Beyond Borders. She is, I hope I don't get a title wrong, I think she's a director under Faisal Al-Matia, who himself started out as an atheist in Iraq, who I knew way back in the day, pre-2011, I think it was, when I was first starting out. So over the years, I've worked with Melissa Chen, who's been, a guest on Joe Rogan and has done her own amazing things in the field for atheists for close to a decade now, if not longer. She was friends with the then executive director of AAI, I think it was, Michael Sherlock. Did I get his name right?
Yep.
Yep. Who said that AAI could benefit from someone like me, who doesn't quite work in the same way as the average case worker. And so there was a virtual handshake, and I was brought into your fold with all you great people in the organization.
Okay. Any interesting cases you've worked on with ASN that you could be free to talk about, or at least with some key details left out?
Not any really super interesting ones. I had a fair bit of work with the fall of Afghanistan. I guess like everybody here did. A lot of mine was immediate work, getting people routes and contacts in the airport, or to safe houses, or to things like that. Still got a few people in country who I'm helping move from place to place. But every chance I get to direct someone towards one of you guys, I'm more likely to take. The long-term game is more what this organization is better at than I am. So I think part of being a good person in this area is realizing when to direct people towards other resources.
So you say you're working closely with people in Afghanistan and helping them. So are there language barriers there, or their English is fairly good as well?
English is fairly good. I guess there must be a correlation between atheism and education in Afghanistan.
Probably.
Yeah. Yep. Haven't had any language barriers yet. There's probably a few of them who I'm talking to who could probably write better documents in English than I could. Definitely who are more qualified than I am. People who've run, humanitarian organizations in their own country and still can't get out. Reasons for asylum are baffling sometimes for me. And heading humanitarian orgs in Afghanistan, especially it's being helmed by the Taliban, not being a reason to be granted a visa is an everyday nightmare people are waking up to. Yeah.
AAI was involved. There was a group of humanist and secular groups in Canada that lobbied the Canadian government because the wording in their immigration visa for refugees said if you're like a member of a religious minority in Afghanistan that's being persecuted or some such language, but nothing specifically about the non-believers who are specific. It's a death sentence in Afghanistan. So AAI and these organizations successfully lobbied the Canadian government to get that change in place so that people with no belief would be covered under the refugee status. So
absolutely fantastic. Any shift in this field towards easing the way for more atheists is just amazing work. So well done to AAI.
Yeah. Well, it's just amazing how it just doesn't occur to some of these governments that especially in Germany with Mohammed's case that, you send this guy back, it's death. Why would you even think about deporting somebody to one of these countries with this sort of Islamist mentality where people are being murdered for just thinking?
They'd be waiting at the airport for someone like Mohammed. That's the thing. And he was this close to being deported. It's amazing, And to think that the West, which is secular and almost defined by its freedom from religion and its long struggles over the centuries, to not recognize atheism as a reason for asylum, it's just baffling. And it feels like sometimes being the only sane person in a room full of insane people.
Yeah, you would think they would know better. You kind of have to question their humanity, or if not their intelligence, that you're sending this person back to certain persecution. Like it's on the news, like if not every day, at least every week, of some outrage going on because somebody thought something. In Pakistan, it seems like every couple of weeks somebody's dragged out and beaten and killed. So was it Nigeria? This last 2 weeks, there's 2 people have been killed for blaspheming the prophet. So it's
insane.
Like,
yeah,
I just don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, and look, you can go down layers and find that just when you scratch the surface of all these things, there's always layers of geopolitics and deals and sub deals between countries. Even Muhammad himself will give you really good information on this. Like, Sisi being in power in Egypt is good for the West. It's not good for a lot of Egyptians. There's more incarcerations in Egypt now than there were under, was it Morsi?
Mubarak.
Yeah, Mubarak as well. Yeah. So Sisi runs a police state, but he does keep a lot of Islamists under lock and key. So part of the reasons why places like Germany don't want people like Muhammad doing interviews is because it'll upset people back home. And Sisi has said, if you don't keep me happy at home and my people, then I can easily open some doors on some cells. And got a bit of a pop-up there, go away.
It sounds like the plot of Scarface when Castro just opened the jail cells and the asylums and let everybody go to the U.S. So.
Exactly right. So that stuff's always lurking under the surface, which is really, really sad, because you think if anything is going to be a black and white issue in the West, it should be atheism.
You'd think so, but I guess a lot of them they're not thinking about it, or they're a lot of bureaucrats. I mean, I criticize bureaucrats all the time for just being they can't. They've got tunnel vision. They can't think outside the box. They've got a box to tick, and if there's no box, then we can't apply any critical thinking. So I personally, and if you're a civil servant and you're watching this and you're offended, I'm sorry. My personal view is you go to the civil service because you can't get a job anywhere else. So at least that's been my experience with and I've lived in 9 different countries, and the civil servants in every country are the same. They are just people with no ability to function in the real world. They like living in their little boxes of government work and their little guaranteed pensions.
Yeah, at least the crocodiles in cans serve a purpose, right?
Taking out the civil servants.
Yeah. Okay. There is one thing I'd like to bring up, and that is I'm not sure if you're aware, but what happens to atheists in the refugee holding centers and things like that? Do you know much about this sort of thing?
I've heard some horror stories. As both of us being on the ASN, we work with people, and you hear some of the horror stories. Yeah, I guess it's different from country to country and how much overcrowding there is. But I've heard some bad stories. But go ahead.
Yeah, so from Australia all the way through to Europe, it seems like a cross-section of a camp is more dangerous for atheists than in the countries they're fleeing from. In Muhammad's case especially, he has a lot of praise for the German authorities because they have CCTV at every angle. But he had some hairy moments where as soon as his identity was leaked, the crowds were working out ways to get him. And on the other side of the world, in the cases I've helped who have ended up on detention center islands, the same case happens. The detainees find out that a member is an atheist, and the whole island mobilizes to take out that one threat. This is the entry point to the West, and it's concerning that this is such an issue, and then that population is released within our societies. It's concerning when you multiply the numbers out over the years. Will there be issues for atheists who are public in these countries when they've come from places in the Middle East? Will we be facing our own Nigerian moments in the near future?
It seems a little bit hypocritical that these people who are fleeing repression and persecution or war or poverty, whatever, would then turn on somebody else in the same situation as them. That just seems completely inhuman, that they would not have the compassion for somebody else that they want from these governments that they're seeking asylum from for themselves.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything written about it anywhere, but I've been involved in multiple cases, and I've got thousands of written words from these people with photos at times, backing up what their accounts. So hopefully one day that can come to light, and maybe AAI can look into it in the future.
You would think that the people that are hunting the atheists, you would think that, okay, well, if that's your attitude, as you said, they get released into your society. You would hope this would count against them and their claims. So, sorry, if you're going to do this to your own in the detention camps, why would we let you into our society? Out you go. So.
Character test, right?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Character test.
Oh, character test, yeah. But you can fake those, right? But if they've got CCTV cameras and they can see what's going on,
yeah.
you would think, the security monitoring the cameras would say, "Hey, we saw you going after Mohammed, so sorry, you're rejected. Out you go."
It's on my wish list.
Well, that's one of the things that gets me is that it seems to be particularly confined to the Islamic world, that this level of outrage that they can stoke this fire with just, he said, something about Muhammad, and then like just people are inflamed enough to kill people. And I've been saying for at least a decade that the human race is just too stupid for religion, and every one of these cases just seems to reinforce it for me. That if somebody commits an act of blasphemy, you're willing to just this mob mentality, then sorry, religion really needs to die, and it needs to die quickly. Because we just can't. We're a bunch of stupid primates, and we don't need this kind of a stick. So
yeah, bring on the AI, right? Maybe they can sort it out for us. Let someone else take the wheel for a while.
Yeah. So any other interesting cases that you'd like to chat with, or those are the main highlights?
Yeah, they're the main highlights. Look, I've had a few cases where it's been 14-year-old girls in places like, in Morocco, parents have found out, girls who were the apple of their parents' eye one day, and then on realization that their daughter is an atheist, they've been kicked out onto the street. And being kicked out onto the street in a place like Morocco is a much more fraught affair than if it happened in Melbourne, for example, or, Canada, things like that. So this stuff is happening every day. And people argue that, Morocco is progressing, which they might be. They probably are, if I'm fair. But it highlights just how, like you said before, how far we have to go and how we are just dumb primates when, parents can kick their fledgling from a nest just for having an idea that's different than theirs.
Yeah. It's weird because you think about, usually when you think of that situation, it's because the kid has come out as LGBTQ, their parents kicked them out, but just for thinking, they kicked them out. So
yeah, so a lot of work I've done has been getting these people from the houses, sometimes looking at maps that are written in French and things like that, because a lot of the street names are French, and getting them to people who, one, you can trust, and two, won't be compromised themselves by having a 14-year-old girl run to their house. So it's a game of fine tuning, and you've got to build your contacts with
well, it's good that there is this network, at least that there are people willing to help and people like you who are helping to facilitate. So at least that, for whatever support net that is, at least there's something.
Yeah. Well, sadly, it's quite a tragedy that people like me have to exist. I don't have formal training. I'm not a qualified psychologist or counselor or things like that. But thankfully, I can point to a lot of those people for tips when I do have to, pass on the information to cases that I do help. But the goal one day is to not exist when it comes to my position in this space. If I can just pass things on to established organizations, or there's never a need for us anymore, then, that's the goal. Hopefully,
maybe in the next 50 years, there seems to be an enlightenment going on in the Islamic world with the rising number of non-believers within atheism, the access to information on the internet. So I think Islam is headed full speed for their own reformation and enlightenment. Hopefully.
Fingers crossed, touch wood, all that stuff. I'm with you 100%. Apparently, even the numbers are underreported of
for sure
in the Middle East. So that's great. I mean, I know one of the cases I had was an Iranian. That was actually, there is one case I can talk about, who was the longest held in detention on an Australian island in history. He was eventually picked up for printing forbidden books in Iran. But he said that the underground book market there is so big and so hard to keep a lid on, and so many people are reading the books that the authorities can't keep up. If anything, he was just a bit unlucky. But the youth especially is, I think there was a tertiary completion rate in Iran that's higher than a lot of Western European countries. So the regime is there, the boot is on the neck, but the people aren't down and out yet there. Every time something happens over there, I keep thinking this could be it.
Yeah. Oh, the numbers are definitely underreported because just the nature of the society they live in, they can't openly express themselves. So it's definitely, I've met quite a few, as you said, atheism correlates with higher education. So I know quite a few people who've been educated abroad, worked abroad, but who still live in the Middle East. And, they'll talk openly to people like me and you, but, in the general society, they just keep a lid on it. So.
Yeah, they can't really respond to a pollster at the door with a survey saying, tell us your views on the state religion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but hopefully we'll see a change in the next 50 years. We probably won't be alive to see it, but it's coming. Hopefully.
Come on, man. With technology advancing the way it is, you don't reckon like
Well, you never know. It could happen within the next decade. We'll see. But I think a lot of the old guard need to die off first. A lot of the older generation who are in power are the ones keeping a lid on things. So it's going to take a little bit of time until that old guard dies. There's a quote. Oh, who is it from? I can't. I'll put it in the description about how science advances one funeral at a time. So because you've got the old guard and they're saying, oh, that idea is stupid and it'll never fly. So things only advance, as the old guard dies off. So we're getting there. So
that's it. One funeral at a time. I like that. We should do
yeah.
bumper stickers as part of the promotional campaign for atheism.
One funeral at a time of the zealots. So.
Yeah, and look, it's the institutions as well. You look at people like Ataturk, almost a century ago now. The people don't have to be ready for atheism. The institutions drive change as well. And if you can put them in place, which is an undertaking, let's be fair, the work happens that way as well. So I think the reform-minded people in places like the Middle East are there as well, waiting to come to the fore. The King of Morocco is one. A lot of these people, don't forget, are educated overseas in the West. It's not always an indicator of someone who's willing to relax the reins at home. I think Kim Jong-un, is that the current one?
Yeah, he was educated in Europe, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. So he's not the best test case for this theory, but there are some out there. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, time will tell. So we're just at 2022. So let's see where we are in 2030. Hopefully, we've seen some big changes. I saw when I lived in Hong Kong, I was part of the marine environmentalism, and we campaigned hard to stop shark finning. And in just 5 to 10 years, we saw a massive shift in shark fin consumption. So it is possible with dedicated people. You can see some generational shifts happening quite quickly. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well done on that one. That was a huge thing affecting the region where we were. So I hear now that there is whole sections of like a marine reserve that are, even in places like Indonesia where shark finning is banned, which is just fantastic. That was part. Yeah. That was you, was it?
That was part of me. Yeah, I was part of the campaign to help drive that in Hong Kong to drive both education and to drive consumption down. And shark fin soup is traditionally served at weddings, and we ran campaigns to educate young couples to educate their guests on why they're not serving shark fin and why they've chosen another alternative to help change attitudes and perceptions. And it was, excuse me, and within 5 to 10 years, we saw a pretty huge drop in consumption in Hong Kong.
Well, your stock has just gone up even further with me, mate. So well done.
Yeah, we actually ran a campaign for the weddings that we gave away for the first. So we ran a campaign that was actually my idea, so I'll take the credit for this one, to encourage couples to do it. The first prize was a free trip to Fiji. So airfare we got Fiji Air to kick in the airfare. We had two or three hotels kick in packages. We had dive shops kicking in packages, sorry, so they could go out and see the sharks in the water. And it was like, so whoever got like the most votes, and we had to, play with the numbers because people were like, getting bots to go in and vote. So we had to backtrack all that stuff out and had the lawyers looking at it. So it was a pretty successful campaign. And we tallied up the number of bowls of shark fin soup that were not served. Like, so we say you have 20 couples and each wedding has 200 people. So, and we tallied up, this is the number of shark fin that was not served. So sorry for getting off topic on atheism for people watching at home, but we have other interests as well. So
yeah, exactly right. My sister will be pleased to watch this episode, not just because I'm in it, but she's a wildlife rehabilitation expert, and she'll be super stoked to hear one of my colleagues is so involved in doing the right thing. So well done.
We did. We were doing beach cleanups every year. One of my friends was a chef at a restaurant in Hong Kong, and he says, "Don't just bully me about serving sustainable alternatives. Present me the alternatives. Don't make me go out and look for it. You guys are the marine environmentalists and the advocates. You go find me. So we brought in the Marine Stewardship Council, and we found suppliers that were doing sustainable seafood, and we actually hosted an event." Where we brought the chefs in the restaurant and the F&B managers in with these suppliers, and we had that event for them. So
multi-layered.
There's lots of ways to make this world a better planet.
Yeah. I mean, we have our agenda and the way we want things to work. Those of us who care about the world and all the organisms that live within it. But like you said, you have to give people all the parts of a solution. You can't just browbeat them with what you want to have.
And just wag your finger and help them. So
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. Thanks for joining us, Troy. It was great to talk to you. It was great to finally connect in person and not just via Messenger. So I thank you for coming on. I thank you for all the hard work you've been doing with these networks and helping people to get out. So I applaud that effort, and I hope some of the people watching this, maybe they can direct a few more people your way as well, that you can help out. So.
Jason, thanks so much for your time, and it's been a great chat. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. You're very welcome. Okay, so we'd like to remind everybody, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you all on the next episode. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Okay, thanks for listening, and don't forget we're on YouTube, so follow us on YouTube. Just search for Atheist Alliance International, and please subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're also on all of your favourite podcast platforms, so make sure that you follow us on there as well. See you next time.